Alright, let me know if you can hear me now. Okay. I had to check my microphone because it's plugged in, but sometimes the software goes kind of crazy. Anyway, so yes, like I was saying, welcome. We are in the office right now with the model railroad, and we're gonna do some work on it. I'm not really sure what. Maybe you guys can tell me what I should do. Yeah, and then I'll also let you guys decide what train we run today. I have 3 trains in total. There is a passenger train, there is a freight train, and there is a logging train. And so I'll let you guys decide which train should run around the rails right now. So let me know. Hello, everyone. Hello, Steve. Hello, Moonzer. Hello, Mateo. Hello, Kevin. Squidgy Top. Ozzy. Mauritania. Giorgio. Mike. Let's see. Who else we got here? Did I say hello to Jack? Hello, Jack. Ozzy, thank you so much for upgrading to Senior Archivist. Here, just fine. How is Alex's weather today? It's 116, but dry, no humidity. Oh, wow, that is hot. We had 116 in Portland in the year 2021, which was the highest recorded heat ever in Portland, which was insane. Like, all the trees were shriveling and dying. I've never seen anything like it before. Yeah. So today is not so bad. I think we have about 85 degrees outside today, which is not bad. Not good, in my opinion, but not bad. But on 4th of July, I think we're supposed to get 100 degrees, which for this area of the United States is pretty hot, 100 degrees. So, alright, let's see. I've got people saying logging train. One person says freight train. Moonzer says you're buffering. On my end, it's not showing buffering. So, I have an excellent connection. It may be your connection, or it could be just YouTube being weird, but I should have an excellent connection right now. Let's see. Okay, so everybody's saying logging train. Okay, so alright, so let's go ahead and get that out. Thankfully. Now, what's really cool is I'll kind of explain this to you guys. You see these 3 switches here? These are not for switch tracks. They are associated with switch tracks, but I do not have powered switch tracks on my layout. What they are actually is power connection. So once I turn on the main power to the whole layout, I have 3 sections of track that are what they call spur lines, because they spur away from the main line. And there are 3 sections on the whole layout that I can individually disconnect the power to. This lets me have a DC layout with more than 1 locomotive on it. Because on a DC layout, if you have no power separation, and you try to put more than 1 locomotive on the track, then all locomotives on the track will try to run at the same time. Because it's not like a digital control, it's just analog. So the way that we control that is, if I have 2 locomotives like I do, I have a Forney that is sitting in the engine house, and then I have a Porter engine that will be pulling the logging train. And since I can only run one at a time, I need to make sure I isolate the power, so that way both are not running at the same time when I turn the power on. So anyway, these 2 switches are for the engine house, which is where the Forney is in the engine house right now on this track. And then the second track is normally where I keep the Porter, but it just so happens I was kind of fooling around with the Porter yesterday, and so the Porter is on the 3rd track, which is the logging track on the other side of the layout. So I'm going to flip that on, so that way when I turn the power on, the logging train will start moving At my command. Okay, now I'm going to go stand over here so I can turn the power on and get that moving. Oh, I got to turn the power on in order to make it move. Okay. Come on, come on. Did I do something wrong? Come on. I think I did something wrong. No, there is power to the rails. Why is that not moving? I can actually see the lights on the different cars, which tells me that there's something. Oh, there we go. That was weird. It just didn't move. All right, here we go. All right, once the logging train is fully on the track, then I will switch the switch. And ever since I put that special grease on the rails, the special electrical grease, it has really helped with the connection. I can run this little tiny locomotive at a crawl and it will run smoothly, which is nice. Without that grease, it wouldn't happen that way. The electrical connection just isn't that good. So yeah. So on the logging train, as you probably just saw, there are 3 what they call skeleton log cars, which are carrying 3 real logs. I actually went out and found the most perfect looking sticks I possibly could and then cut them down to the scale log size. And I even gave them the same kind of cuts that the lumberjacks would have given for cutting down the logs. Because it's not just like a clean, like all the way through. Like it would have been kind of, you know, I don't know the words. I'm not a logger. And then at the end of the train is the little bobber caboose. So you guys, last time I showed you guys the layout, I had the new caboose, which is on the other side over there, attached to the end of the freight train. Okay, so let's answer some questions here. Where are we? Hey Jeffrey, how's it going? Moonzer says, Alex, did you know that the Southampton Ocean Terminal was sadly torn down? For Cunard, you mean? Yes. The original was torn down, but they have a new one. So I was gonna read a comment from Jack Bradley, but it doesn't make sense to me. It just says or APT for short, but I don't know what that means. Okay. Let's see here. It's getting ready. To the great Moonzer says, Alex, can you do a video on the RMS Coronia 2, the green one? Possibly, but I don't do like requests, because the thing is that I always make a video based off of what I feel captures my attention at the time. So even if I say, oh yeah, eventually there will be an ocean liner video for a specific ocean liner, it doesn't mean it's going to happen anytime soon. It doesn't mean I'm going to schedule it. It just means that when I get to it, I get to it. Because what makes my videos so fun to watch is that I make them right at a moment that I'm like really, really interested in that particular subject, and I just have to like get it all out of my head and onto a video. And so that's how I do, you know, my videos. Mike says derailment. Nope, no derailments. Moonzer says, Alex, have you been to the UK, or will your trip next year be the first time? It'll be the first time. I've never left my country before. Most Americans haven't left America. You know, it's not common for us to leave. So, but yeah, it will be my first time out of the country for sure. Hi, Linda. How's it going? Moonzer says, Alex, I have a smashed penny from the Queen Mary. Awesome. Do I know what the RMS Franconia is? I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it. Transportation fan from California says, didn't logging trains had their own caboose, and they were much, much smaller? Some did. Not all of them. So there are... The thing is, okay, I know there are standards, right? There are standards for railroads across the United States. But in the 1890s, there were far less standards, and really it was like the wild, wild west. It was like, you know, there might have been a need for a caboose that looked a certain way for specific operations, but sometimes if you were a small, short line, you know, industrial railroad, then you might not have a very big budget, and maybe like the only thing you had at your disposal was a bobber caboose. So then they might have used that. So that's kind of how this railroad goes. Is it's not like following strict standards that would have been in code books. It is following the whole we use what we have kind of mentality. So yeah, but that's why I didn't want to use the big caboose on the end of the logging train. It would have looked weird. So I'm using the bobber caboose, which is much smaller. Let's see. Mick says, hi Alex, what are those 3 switches in the frame? Well, I just explained it, but essentially those switches control individual power for individual tracks on the layout. This allows me to run multiple locomotives without having to worry about all the locomotives running at once when I turn the power up. So I can actually individually switch off certain tracks, so that way it will stay unpowered. Yeah. And the front 2 switches here, these front 2 are for the engine house where the locomotives sit and rest. So this controls the right side of the engine house, and this controls the left side. And this last one controls the logging spur line, which is what the logging train sits on whenever it's not in use. And the logging spur line goes over the river, so it kind of sits above the river, and that's where they would dump logs into the river. I sold the dome. Moonzer says, Alex, did you know in 2003 they sold the dome next to the Queen Mary Carnival Cruise Line? They didn't sell it. They leased its use. So it's still owned by Long Beach, but they leased the use out to Carnival. And so Carnival uses it. They don't maintain it, which is kind of weird. Like, I don't know how that works. Like, how do you lease it but don't maintain? I don't get it. But anyway, yeah. Let's see. Boy, the comments are really going fast. Squidgy Top says, Alex, are you British? No, I have family heritage, way back down the lineage. We come from England, Ireland, and such. But no, I am not British. Windsor says, how is the weather here? It's pretty warm. It's 85 degrees, which is warm for a day up here. 85 degrees Fahrenheit, in case people are wondering. Jack says, Alex, the APT is short for the Advanced Passenger Train, a high speed that tilts. It was introduced by British Rail to run intercity services on the West Coast Main Line, but it didn't go out so well. Oh, that's weird. Was there like an accident or something that kind of like ended its use? Okay. TNS Rocks says, which tree species are on the logging train? Douglas fir is on the logging train. But it could easily be, at this scale, mistaken for pine. But yeah, it is Douglas. It's real Douglas fir. Like I said earlier, that I had found sticks, like large sticks I was able to cut down to the size of logs, scale logs, and they were, real Douglas fir sticks. So this layout is based off of, or I should say inspired by, but not directly based off of. It's inspired by Oregon country. So it's inspired by the by this region that I live in, and the logging and various mining industries that exist there. So the idea, which there's a more succinct explanation in the description of this live stream, but the explanation is that this town is really like a whistle stop where a bunch of different industries converge, and then they will, like if there's a logging train coming up, they might drop off the logging cars here, and then it'll be connected to the end of a freight train and then hauled out by a larger locomotive. But basically there are different industries that kind of converge in this little town. There's logging, there's mining, and there's cattle ranching. And there's some kind of tooling industry, but the tooling industry itself won't be featured on this layout. So I don't even know what it would be, but it would be a tooling industry. And so the freight train here, would be hauling out 2 box cars with various freight in them, tooling and equipment and whatever. They would also be bringing in supplies, bringing in, just things the town needs. I feel like I'd be sitting here forever if I tried to be too specific. But then there's also a cattle car at the end, which I'll pull the train a bit further forward as soon as this one passes. So there's a cattle car here. There are 2 gondola cars for hauling the ore, and then at the very end is the new caboose, the extended length caboose, and yeah. So that's the freight train. But like I said, if need be, the logs can be hauled by a larger. They can be left here and then combined with the freight train to be moved. But mainly the way the logging industry in this layout works is that essentially this train will pick up log cars that have been loaded at the nearby forests and logging forests, and then it will take the log cars to the I don't even know what to call it. It's a bridge where they drop all the logs into the river, and then from there the river will naturally carry the logs down to a destination off the layout, not featured on the layout. And that's where they'll combine all the logs into large cigar-shaped pontoons that will then be carried down to San Diego by going through the Columbia River out to sea. So, which is really how they did it in real life up here in Oregon. They would log all the logs. What am I trying to say? They would they would chop down all the logs they needed. Then they would take them by train to a nearby creek or river, dump the logs into there, combine them at a main facility along the Willamette River, for instance, and then a tugboat would haul the giant cigar-shaped logs down the Willamette to the Columbia River, and then out to sea, and then all the way down the coast to San Diego. And so, yeah, that's kind of how this layout is designed. And again, there will be a town right here, but it's really more of a whistle stop. It's just a town that exists there because there's a need to do several things here, but not necessarily because that's where settlers decided to lay down, to hang their hat, so to speak. So let's try to answer some questions here. Mike says trains are awesome. They certainly are. I love trains. Oh, I see. The APT was designed to tilt. Okay, yeah, I've heard of that before, where trains are designed to tilt because the corners are too sharp. Is that what the word I'm looking for? Mick says, are you worried about getting seasick on your planned crossing on the Queen Mary 2? Am I worried about getting seasick? Not really. I mean, I've never been on a ship before that has been out to sea, so it's not like I even know if I'm susceptible to getting seasick. At times, I can get car sick. That they call that just general motion sickness, but I don't get motion sick on just anything. I only get sick when I'm in a car and I have to do something that requires me to look away from the windows. So if I need to read some paperwork, maybe I'm going to the post office, I need to mail something, I need to just check over what I'm mailing. If I have to look down and read, I can get car sick from doing that. But and it's also why I don't usually check my phone when I'm in a car, not unless the car is parked or something. It's just because if I look down for too long, I can get motion sick. But that's about it. I've never gotten any other kind of motion sickness before. I've been in all kinds of ride simulators and things like that, all my life. I've even been in an earthquake simulator, which has no windows, so you can't see out of it. So it's the whole building shaking, and so I've never gotten sick. So I don't believe that I will get seasick, but I do believe that it may take me a while to adjust to the feeling of the motion of the ship. Now, thankfully, a lot of people have assured me that the Queen Mary 2 is one of the smoothest ships to ride the ocean on, even in a storm. And I do believe we may encounter a storm because my friend Chris, who's going to be traveling with me, he really wants to go during the winter season when it's really stormy. He wants to see the Queen Mary 2 really handle the ocean swells and stuff. So and I told him I'm fine with that because that'd be kind of interesting, an interesting story to tell. So, but yeah, I don't know, honestly. But am I worried about it? Not really. I think I'm more worried about how I'm going to get to the UK. I'm more worried about, making sure I don't miss my flights to get to New York or to go from, London to Belfast and Belfast back to London, things like that. Just, I'm worried about being on schedule, really. That's what I'm worried about. Okay, let's see. Mike says, what is the next big dish your dad is making? I think Mike's referring to my dad's YouTube channel. The next big dish, well, he's already made it, but he hasn't posted the video yet. It'll be posted on Friday. But he made something called chili verde, which is basically like pork in a green chili sauce. And so that will be featured on Friday. But tomorrow, he's going to be making carne asada. So we're going to be filming that tomorrow. And then you'll probably see the carne asada dish feature not this Friday, but the Friday after. From there, Transportation fan from California says, how do you store your trains? That's a good question. Maybe I can show you. I'll have to pick up the webcam there, and I'll kind of explain it as I go along. Okay. So basically, now, assuming that when you say trains, you mean the cars of the trains, essentially, how they're stored is they're kept on spur tracks. So there is a track here that has the freight train. I actually can't see what I'm doing. Let me do this real quick. Then I can see. Oh, I just realized that this camera is not working. Because I was like moving this camera. Alright, let me try again. I just realized that camera is not working. Launch cam. Properties. There we go. That was so weird. I didn't even know that camera wasn't even working this whole time. Okay. So, okay, essentially, let me show you again. So this is the freight train, and it's stored on what we call a spur track, which is a track that kind of juts out away from the main line. And you can see it curves around the mountain, and it ends just before it meets the track that meets up with the bridge, which is back here. And you guys probably can't tell, but there's a bridge over a river, so that's the whole river there. Yeah, and then back down here, you can see that there's also a spur track. So you see there's the track there which juts out from the main line and then comes out this way. And then over here is the engine house. So the 2 locomotives are stored in the engine house. I hope to one day have 3 locomotives. There will only be room for 2 in the engine house, but it would be nice to have a 3rd locomotive. But anyway, there's another spur line, which is way over here, and that is for the logging train. So it goes across the river. That's where they dump logs into the river, and it'll be carried down the river off the layout. And so that's the spur line for that. And then there is a 3rd spur line, which trying not to derail my own train. Just a moment. So there's a 3rd spur line all the way in the back, and that is where I store the passenger train because it is the longest spur track on the entire layout, and it's hidden back there. And so yeah, that's where the passenger train is stored. So there is enough storage on this layout for 3 trains and 3 locomotives, and which is actually quite good when you think about how limited a space we have. The layout may look big. It's one of the biggest comments I get is that, oh, it looks like a big train layout. And by all means, in size, it is. It takes up half of this room I'm in. But in terms of size in comparison to the scale of the trains, it's not big at all. It's a very small layout. And there's only so much room to squeeze in tracks and storage. But I knew I needed a lot of storage because I've had multiple layouts in the past. I've had layouts in N scale and HO scale. And each time I build a layout, I never have enough storage because I end up buying so many different trains. You know, my last layout, which was an N scale layout, I had how many spur lines I had? I had a yard for storing 5 different trains. So there were 5 different tracks. Oh, no, that was it. Yeah, okay. There was no other spurs. So, okay, yeah. I had a yard for storing 5 different trains. And technically, if you count the main line as storage when you're not using it, you could technically have 1 more train. So this layout is designed with storage for 3 trains. But technically, you know, I could have 4 trains and just store the 4th one on the main line. But that means every time I want to use a different train, I'll have to swap out, you know, where it's going to be stored. So, and the 3 spur lines I showed you, they're in varying lengths. So once again, the longest one on the layout, which is all the way in the back by the wall, holds the passenger train. And there's enough room on that I could store a little more than a 5-car passenger. I'm not going to say 6 cars. I don't think it'll fit 6 passenger cars. But it is large enough to fit 5 passenger cars and maybe a really short car of some kind. I only have 4 cars on the passenger train because it's a really heavy train. And if I were to have 5 cars, the locomotives would not be able to pull it because it's a really heavy train. And then the medium size is this one here in the middle of the layout. This is where the freight train is stored. And the freight train, there's enough room on this track for, let's see, it's a 6-car freight train. I could probably store 1 more car on this track, and then it's full. And then the last one is the smallest one, which is the logging track. There's enough room on that logging track that I could buy 1 more logging car if I wanted to. And then it'll fit comfortably on that track, but that's about it. So in terms of storage, it is quite limited, but nevertheless, it's a lot of storage when you think about how much is on this layout, you know. So, and I wanted to do it in a way that a lot of modelers who love having tracks galore, sometimes they build their layouts and there's, in my taste, too many tracks everywhere. It looks like it's a table full of tracks with maybe a few decorations in between, and I didn't want mine to look like that. I wanted mine to look like a natural layout, like maybe this is how they might build one, you know. But it had to have a lot of storage, nevertheless. So it was a challenge. Steve says, I hate to bail so soon, but I have errands I need to do. All right, we'll see you later, Steve. Okay, so back up here. I have to scroll all the way back up because all the comments were going around while I was explaining things. Sorry, I'm just trying to find where I was at when I was reading all these comments. Okay, there's a lot of back and forth. People were talking about the Talgo. Here we go. Transportation fan from California says, when you add figures to the layout, will they be wearing Western style clothing? That's a good question. So I will definitely be buying them period appropriate clothing. Well, not buying them period, buying them wearing period appropriate clothing, if I can. But sometimes, you're limited as to what supplies you can purchase. So if I have to purchase some figures that might be wearing slightly more modern clothing, like the most likely time frame that they sell is actually 50s. It's weird. A lot of model railroads are themed to be active around the 1950s. In fact, my last layout was a 1950s layout, but it was a railroad museum which had steam locomotives and trains. But anyway, if I have to buy 1950s figures, I will paint the clothes on them to be the more subdued colors that were worn in the 1890s. They did have some bright colors, but the trick to making 1950s clothes look a bit older is to dull the colors down a little bit. Lots of, like, the men wearing lots of browns and blacks, and then the women wearing lots of, dark purples, greens, and, stuff like that. So that's a good way to kind of fake it a little bit. But I have confidence I'll be able to find people wearing late Victorian clothing. So I'm pretty confident in that. Oh yes, Moonzer. I've heard. Steve told me about when you guys saw the photograph with the Queen Elizabeth staircase. Scopolamine. Scopolamine, is that like for seasickness or something? I know that if I end up being seasick on the Queen Mary 2, I'll definitely have to use something like some kind of seasickness medication. But I don't think I'll be seasick. I mean, I have I have a very strong stomach. I know that's a phrase normally used for when you see something disgusting, but my stomach is strong in the sense that I don't easily just get nauseous or throw up. It takes a lot to make me nauseous. So I have a good feeling. Just scrolling through I'm looking for comments that I feel that I could respond to. Something that, I could read out loud and Dino says, bring a package of Bonin. Random yawn. Okay. Bring a package of Bonin with you on Queen Mary 2 trip. It is helpful for seasickness and does not make you sleepy. Awesome. That's good, because I don't like feeling sleepy. As I just yawned. I don't like feeling sleepy. That's one of the reasons why, if I have allergic reactions to something, I don't take Benadryl. Because I don't like feeling sleepy in the middle of the day, you know what I mean? It drives me nuts. I'd rather just be, itching, scratching, and sneezing. Which happened recently, actually. A couple weeks back, I was puppy sitting for my sister, and the puppy had rolled around in something outside. Some kind of plant that I didn't even realize that me and my dad were allergic to. So I broke out in hives, and we were both sneezing like crazy. And, we have Benadryl, but I was like, I'm not taking Benadryl. I don't want to fall asleep, Okay. Linda says, I didn't know your dad was doing cooking videos. Is there a link on your channel? There is. The link on my channel is if you go to my most recent live stream. It's called Afternoon Tea, but I was actually sitting right here in front of the train layout instead. But the last live stream I did, which was an afternoon tea, if you go to that, towards the top of the description of the video is a link to my dad's channel. So otherwise, you can also look up Dishing with Joe. So yeah, you just type in the @ sign in the YouTube search and type in Dishing with Joe, and he's got a blue profile picture of cooking utensils. So, and he does pretty good videos. You know, they're kind of relaxed. They're the kind of videos that you relax when you watch them, instead of something that's really so like, you know, 3 tablespoons of butter, and that kind of thing. It's like really relaxing. It's like you just watch him cook, and so yeah, pretty cool. And yes, I do help him with his channel. I film him cooking, and then I help give him advice for editing and sound editing, and then I help him like fill out the information boxes and stuff before he uploads the video to YouTube and all that. So yeah, but he's doing really well. His most recent video just surpassed 100 views, which is pretty good for a brand new channel. So Moonzer says, Alex, I want to sail the Queen Anne. Okay. Squidgy Top says, in the UK, the spur track is called a siding. I think we do call them sidings here, but siding is normally used, here in the United States, siding is normally used to explain a track that runs parallel to the main line. And it's a track where it's kind of like a track where maybe a train would pull in at a depot and pull away from the main line, that kind of thing. And we use the same terminology, but generally when I hear an American use the term spur line, it's usually for an extended line that goes perpendicular to the main line and goes out somewhere else. And usually it goes, it could go several miles even. But usually here, when I hear the word siding, we usually use that term to mean a track that runs parallel with the main line and is relatively short, certainly under a mile long, certainly under a mile. And it's usually just so trains could pull off of the main line if there's a priority train going by. So yeah, that's kind of how we use that terminology here. Whoa, the chat just jumped. Where? Oh, here we go. Okay. Mick says, I'm also quite nervous about missing important connections on my travels. That's why I usually plan an extra night at least between flights and ship departures. Oh yeah, definitely. That's what me and Chris are gonna do for sure. Because we have to take a plane to New York, and we plan to stay like a night in New York. That way the next day we'll have plenty of time to get to the Queen Mary 2 and, do our embarking and stuff like that. So we do plan to put like a day between connections. And I think I might actually, instead of going straight from Portland to New York, I'm probably going to go from Portland to Southern California to stay a night or two on the original Queen Mary, most likely one night because it's expensive. But to stay a night aboard the original Queen Mary, meet my friend Chris because he lives in the LA region, and so then he and I will take a plane from LA to New York. And part of the reason why I want to do that is, one, I don't like being on long flights by myself. I get so bored. But Chris and I can talk for hours and hours and hours, about just anything. So I'd rather travel with Chris as much as I can than to have to spend a 5 or 6 hour flight getting to New York by myself. You know, I hate flying. You know, like, I would go by train if it was efficient, but it's not efficient. So, let's see here. Jack Bradley says, "Hey Alex, why don't you buy a model of the Advanced Passenger Train, or APT for short, and run it on your train set in the future?" I'm really only interested in steam locomotives from before the 1900s, so it's really not my thing, and it'd probably cost me a lot of money to buy it anyway. So yeah, I don't think so. My dad has a train of his own. It's the Challenger. You guys have probably heard of it. It's a steam locomotive, the Challenger. And he also has, I think, 5 passenger cars. Union Pacific, I think they are? I don't remember. Probably not. I'm probably not even close. But anyway, 5 passenger cars that go with it. It's a really cool set that he has. And I'm going to try to convince him to bring it out of storage, and then we can run it on this layout just temporarily, just so, because he's never actually seen his own train run, because he bought it, but he didn't have his own track. He didn't have anything. Like, he bought it years and years ago when I was a little kid, probably well over 20 years ago. Oh yeah, definitely well over 20 years ago. But he never got to see it run. And so this will be the first time, and he's had it for 20 years. Now, I've seen it run, though, because a couple years back, I want to say it was 20... Oh. Well, less than 10 years ago. I don't know when, but less than 10 years ago, I built him a shelf for storing that train. In fact, the shelf is sitting in the corner, just leaning up against the wall, and it's got track and ballast and everything. And it's the same length as the whole train with the Challenger on it. And I had to run the Challenger just to make sure it could still run. And it ran. It ran very well. And so that's how I know it'll still work. And it's been kept in its original boxes all this time, so I know it's in good condition. But yeah, he's never seen it run, so I want to set up his train on the layout. His train is an HO scale, but because this is an ON30 layout, it's O scale, but it's ON30, so the track gauge is the same track gauge as HO scale. So his train, which is a smaller scale, will still be able to run on this track. And so, yeah, the only thing is that everything else will be out of scale with it. You know, all the buildings, everything will be much larger. So, but yeah, but it, you know, it's only just temporary. We'll probably just run it the one day and then put it up on the shelf and then put the shelf against the wall. So, all right, let's see. Oh, the chat keeps jumping, and I have to try to figure out where I was last at. Dino says, the staff on Queen Mary 2 also put out ginger around the ship that can settle your upset stomach naturally. Oh, nice. I love ginger. I'll just eat ginger, you know, like usually it's pickled ginger that I'll eat. But yeah, I love ginger. I put it in all my teas and everything sometimes. I don't know why I'm talking strange today. You'd think I was drunk or something. Hey Doc, how's it going? I acted in lectures for some very interesting topics in lecture. Dino says, Queen Mary 2 has a very active lecture series with some interesting topics and lecturers. You should check into doing interview with one so you have interest. One you have interest in. I mean, maybe. I'll watch a lecture, but I won't interview someone. I just don't do that. I've been asked so many times in the past to interview people, and I never take up that offer. I don't like interviewing people. I've done it before, but I don't like that. Moonzer says, do you think they should move QE2 to America? I don't really see a point. If anything, I think they should move QE2 to like Southampton or something and have her there as a tourist attraction. But not the United States. I don't really see a point to it. You know, we have the Queen Mary here, which, you know, whenever I'm asked by Americans, like, why don't we have some British ship here? Like, I actually have to take my time to explain just how American that British ship really is and why it matters. But the QE2 is even less American than than the Queen Mary, and so it would be such a stretch to try to explain people why the QE2 is here and not anywhere else. So I don't know. I think if anything, if it's moved, it should be moved to the UK. But yeah, it seems in the UK they don't really have any large ocean liners as tourist attractions. They keep smaller vessels, but no ocean liners, which I think is unfortunate. You know, like Britain is like the original country that was producing so many great ocean liners. And it's sad that they don't have one there. Tyler says, "Miss you, just got out of brain surgery, loving the live." Oh my gosh, well, I hope that you're recovering well from your surgery. Oh, geez. Mick says, I was playing with the idea of booking a crossing on the Queen Mary 2, but I'm worried about the dress code. It's probably way too posh for me. You know, honestly, the dress code has been changed over the years. The only time... So, they do require, like, if you're going to walk around the ship, they do require you to be wearing full, you know, clean pants and stuff, you know, or whatever you call it. If you're from the UK, you don't say pants, you say trousers or something, I don't know. But they do require you to wear full, clean, you know, stuff. You can wear jeans, but they have to be full, not cut up, no major stains or anything on them. You know, and you can walk around with jeans and a polo t-shirt, you know, like it's that relaxed on it. But admittedly, you can't walk around wearing shorts on the Queen Mary 2. They won't allow it. You can't walk around wearing, you know, what we call a wife beater, which is just like I don't even wear them, so I don't even know how to describe them. They're an undershirt without sleeves. You know, you can't walk around wearing that, you know. But, I mean, essentially, you can walk around wearing anything as long as it's just not offensive and it covers you adequately, you know. But if you do go to the specific... There is a buffet there that allows you to dress the same way, but I do believe they require you to wear some kind of blazer, I think, for dinner time. Not for breakfast, not for lunch, but for dinner they do require you to wear just a simple blazer, or as they call in the UK, a jacket. But the other restaurants aboard the ship will require you to be dressed up for dinner, especially on the what do they call those nights? There's usually 3 nights per voyage that they do a, for lack of better words, fancy dress meal. So I think they do 3 of those on the voyage. And that one you have to be pretty, if you're a guy you have to be wearing a tux. And if you're a woman you have to be wearing some kind of nice dress or something. They do allow for nice dress pants for women, but like you have to be dressed up nice for those 3 gala nights. But other than that, it's not that bad. I mean, when I'm out and around, I usually dress a lot to that same dress code anyway. The regular dress code for walk around the ship. So I don't personally see it as a problem. But I did express concern to my friend Chris because I was like, because he wants to do the 3 fancy gala dinner nights. Admittedly, if you're going to go on an ocean liner, you got to do the fancy nights. The thing is that I told him, I was like, we're taking the ship there and we're taking it back. There's a total of 6 nights for fancy dinner. I'm like, but I don't see myself renting a tuxedo for a full month just to wear it for 6 nights out of that month. I'm like, that's a lot of money. At that price, it would be cheaper just to buy the tux. But even then, a tux is really expensive. And, so I'm going to try to convince him not to do the gala dinners, especially because we're going to have to be traveling. We're going to be traveling all over the UK and parts of France. And so I'm like, I don't want to be hauling around my tuxedo with me everywhere I go. It's just extra stuff to carry around. And I want to travel as light as possible. I'm only going to be having like a few outfits with me the entire time, and I'll just rotate them because, it's going to be a lot. Let's see here. Eric says, I never understood why the Queen Mary 2 has a dress code. They're killing the mood if I understand correctly. Now, you being you, Alex, I know you're going to correct me as soon as you read this. Absolutely, Eric. I am going to correct you. Like, it's not killing the mood. So, Eric, when you book, when you book a ship, you book a ship that suits your taste. You don't just book a ship and hope that they have something that you want. So people who are traveling aboard the Queen Mary 2 are doing so because they want that experience. They want to dress nicely. They want to experience a fancy, that's, especially for me, that's the whole reason why, Chris and I chose to go across the Atlantic aboard the Queen Mary 2 as opposed to just getting a plane. On a plane, you don't have to dress fancy. You could wear your pajamas for all they care. But, the thing is that, I want to go to the UK in style. And that would be Queen Mary 2. So it's not like people are being forced to go on the Queen Mary 2 and then on top of that being told, well, you have to dress fancy now. It's not like that at all. It's because people go there because they want to experience that. So yeah, it's very, very different from that. Formal. That's what I was looking for. Thank you, Dangerous Brian. Formal dinner is the word I was looking for, because It's funny because the regular dinner time for the restaurants aboard the Queen Mary 2 is the same dress code as a formal night on a regular cruise ship. But a formal night on the Queen Mary 2 is super formal. It's like tuxedos and dresses, you know? But yes, I was looking for the word formal. Eric says, hey Alex, with your cooking skills you told me about, do you think you'd survive in Hell's Kitchen with Gordon Ramsay? No, because there's a difference between having skills and, you know, and being in a competition. I don't like competitions. I don't play sports. I don't do anything competitive at all. Not even anything that's competitive in mind. I don't play board games. I don't play video games. Nothing competitive. I don't have a competitive bone in my body, you know? And so, yeah, I would certainly not do well in Hell's Kitchen because it's so darn competitive. Not just getting everything done on time, but also just trying to deal with the people that are there. So yeah, I would not do well at all. Oh, Doc left. See you later, Doc. Squidgy Top says, Alex, do you like British trains? There's some British steam locomotives that I like. I don't know them by name or by number. I'm not that well versed in it. But there are some that I like, yeah. Jeffrey says, do you feel like you'll regret not doing formal night once you get there? Sounds like a fun experience. It sounds like a really fun experience. It's something I don't get to do very often in my life. And believe me, I do want to do it. It's just that it's going to be so expensive to rent that tux. And it's going to be so difficult to go around Europe with a tuxedo in your bags, you know? Like, I plan to carry just one small carry-on bag with me. I don't need that much to travel, and I would prefer having as little as possible to travel with. And just renting that tux, I just know it's going to take up all the space, you know. And then I'll have to get it professionally cleaned because it will need to be ironed. It'll need to be, you know, I'm probably going to get it dirty. I mean, God knows. Something's always going to go wrong. I always lean against something, and then all of a sudden I get marks all over my clothes. One time I was like in a coffee shop. I leaned against a wall, and the wall was made of it was like wood paneling. So the paneling dust came off the wall and covered my clothes. So I always get my clothes extremely dirty all in one day. And so I know I'm going to have to get that thing professionally cleaned all the time. It's going to be the biggest headache of the entire trip is that tuxedo. So that's why I'm kind of like, I don't want to do it just because of the frickin' tuxedo, you know? Eric says, I understand dress code on Queen Mary 2 is a little better, but I've never understood dress codes in general. Why can't I wear shorts wherever I want? You know, the whole thing about being American is being able to do whatever you want. But I like a little bit of order. I like a little bit of fashion. I'm not wearing anything fashionable right now. But I do, you know, I'm a very old-fashioned mindset kind of person. You know, I'm the kind of person that kind of wishes that, you know, you know, if anybody's ever seen old photographs or footage of people visiting Disneyland, people used to dress up for that. The women would dress up in their blouses and their skirts or their dresses, and the men would, you know, dress up in some nice leisure wear, you know, very nice clothing. It was an event to go out of your house and do something. And I like that mindset. I like the mindset of I'm going to dress nice to leave the house. I understand people who don't want that. Believe me, I do. Most of my family is like that. They're just like, I'm just going to put on what's comfortable and what looks nice, and I'm leaving. Me, on the other hand, I've always been the kind of person who's like, okay, I'm going to put on the best stuff I have to look as good as I possibly can when I leave the house. That's just me. And that's kind of how I wish things still were in the United States and in the world. But, yeah, you know, so... Yeah, it's a difficult subject because, you know, I don't want, you know, Eric to... I don't want to tell you, oh, well, you should dress up nice everywhere you go. But at the same time, I also feel like, well, I kind of wish people did, because it's an effort that is just being lost, you know? I think it's a little on the sad side when I go somewhere that should be kind of a nice place to go, and everybody's dressed in their flip-flops and their pajamas, and, you know, like, I went to a nice restaurant once, and there was literally, like, some girls at a table across from us, and they were literally dressed in, like, their pajamas and stuff, and I'm like, how were they let in the door of this place, you know? Like, so, yeah, I don't know. I'm not a fan of the whole thing in the United States where people just started dressing kind of homely when they left the house. I'm dressed like this because I'm in my house. I'm not trying to impress you guys right now. In fact, I'm in a room that's full of plaster and dust because it's the office. It's where the train layout's being built. There's probably wet paint in places, you know, so things like that. So I'm purposely not dressed nice for that. But I try to dress nice when I can. You guys have seen my tea time live streams where I dress up with a jacket and a nice shirt or something. I try to dress up for occasion. That's how I am, you know. Linda says, get Chris to pay for your tux. I don't think he's going to do that. Mateo says there was a guy on Hell's Kitchen who looked a lot like Alex. Jeez. Mick says, are you going to book a budget inside cabin on the Queen Mary 2 to save money, or a more expensive window or even balcony cabin? We are going to book... So, Chris and I are going to combine our budgets. We're going to stay in the exact same hotel rooms, the exact same stateroom cabins on the ship. But we both decided, like, you know, we're going to stay in an inside cabin on the Queen Mary 2 because it's the cheapest. And frankly, you know, him and me, we're not going to be in that room all day long. We're only going to be there to sleep. And then as soon as we wake up, we're going to be out and about on the ship, doing stuff, exploring the ship, you know, taking photographs, taking video, you know, filming stuff, you know, for the YouTube channels and all that. So, you know, we were kind of like, we're not going to be in this cabin to really enjoy it anyway, so might as well get the cheapest cabin we can. So that's what we're going to do. And then the same thing with the hotel rooms. I had to have a serious conversation with him because you know, Chris is resolved to just stay in the hotel room that is very, very financially budget friendly. Let's just put it that way. And I told him, I said, you know, Chris, I'm like, I want to save money too, but I also believe in spending just enough money to walk out of the hotel room without lice in my hair or cockroaches in my pants. You know? So I was like, I believe in spending less, but a certain amount I feel like I have to spend on a room to, you know, sleep in a clean hotel room. So there were some things that he was kind of like, oh, that we don't want to stay that place. That's too expensive. And I'm like, it's not, you know. So, but yeah, we're still working out the details of that. I know one thing is for sure. When we visit Belfast, we're gonna have to stay there overnight just because of the way that the airplane schedules work. But I told him, I was like, I want to stay at the Titanic Hotel, which was built into the former Harland and Wolff offices. So I was like, yeah, I want to stay at the Titanic Hotel when we're there for the night. So, you know, we're probably going to do that. And then things of that sort. When we get to Paris, he knows a hotel that he wants to go to stay at. And so I've seen it, and I'm like, okay, that's a good one. I like it. It's very, very cheap, but it looks really, really, really nice for how cheap it is. So I told him, I was like, okay, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. So, yeah, but we'll have to figure things out when it comes to London, Southampton, that kind of thing. I think London, we'll be staying in London probably 5 nights, maybe. But that's only because some of those days we're going to be venturing out of London to go to like places like Bristol. And we don't need to spend the night in Bristol. We're only going to be there for the daytime. So, but, you know, things like that. But nevertheless, we'll be retreating back to London to stay. So we'll still have to figure out where in London we're going to stay. And I need to figure out how I'm going to organize all the places I want to visit and see in London to film. Because I don't just want to go and film the stuff that everybody expects you to film. You know, like people expect me, you know, to go to all the major tourist attractions in London. And many of them I do want to see. But I also want to go to London to see the stuff that maybe not everybody goes there to see. There are certain really old pubs. Like there's one pub that's like the oldest pub in London or something. It's called like the White Horse Inn or something like that. But there's a lot of White Horse Inns. But there's one in particular that's supposedly the oldest. I might be confusing that with something else because there is another pub that is the oldest, and it's not even called White Horse Inn. It's called like something. It's on the Thames. But anyway, yeah. So there's all kinds of stuff I want to see, stuff I want to film, and present that in my videos. But then there's like big tourist attractions that I have to see, like you know, the Tower Bridge. The Tower Bridge is, you know, not just iconic, but it was operated with steam engines, and so I want to go down to the boiler room and film the boiler room and all that. I want to make a history video about the construction and operation of, you know, the Tower Bridge. So stuff like that, you know. Do you guys want me to switch out the train with another train? Let me know. Remember, I have 3 trains. I have the logging train, which is what's going around right now. I have a freight train, and I have a passenger train. Alright, see you later, Eric. Jack Bradley says, what was your favorite Cunard liner that was painted white? Well, at some point, the original RMS Mauritania was painted white, so I'm going to choose that. Mike says another train. Yeah, but which train? Chris says, hey Alex, don't forget to enjoy a Guinness beer when you're in Belfast. Oh, thanks for reminding me, because I like Guinness, but you have to go to a place that is certified to pour Guinness to get the best experience. And so, yeah, I definitely want to do that. I just don't know that I'll be able to convince Chris to do it, you know? So I might have to go by myself. But yeah, definitely I want to have a Guinness in Ireland. I feel like I have to do that, you know? Like, you have to do that. So Chris doesn't drink alcohol at all. So he will not want to go with me to the pub. But, you know, it's gonna suck having to go by myself to the pub. But I have to do it. I mean, God knows when I'll be able to go back to Northern Ireland. Or the island of Ireland at all. I mean, will I ever see, you know, that island again? Frederick says, hi, hello. Dino. Yeah, we talked about going to Liverpool, and believe me, I want to, but I don't think we can do it. I don't think we have enough time in our schedule to make it to Liverpool. We probably might, depending on the voyage schedule. That's what dictates our time in the UK. Generally speaking, when we get dropped off at Southampton by the Queen Mary 2, we won't be able to book it back to New York for another week. I mean, technically we could turn right around and go back, but that leaves us with no time in the UK at all. So if we want time in the UK, but we want to go back as soon as possible, that means 2 weeks. And so that could be anywhere between 12 to 14 days. Now, generally speaking, the departure schedule is like 12 days apart. Sometimes 14, sometimes 12, sometimes 16. If there is 16 days in the departure timeline, between when it drops us off and when we can book it next, then we'll have those 2 extra days and we can go visit Liverpool. But if we only have 14 or even 12 days, we're going to be on a limited schedule for being able to actually visit stuff. But yeah, so far the plan is to explore the cities of Southampton, London, Bristol, Belfast, and Paris, France. We had talked that possibly if there was 2 extra days, that instead of Liverpool, we might actually stay in France and go down to Mont Saint Michel, which is a small rock island off of the coast of Normandy. And it's really cool. It's a little kingdom on a rock, and I want to go there. I want to stay overnight there, because it is like a medieval village frozen in time. It looks so cool, and it's all perched on this big rock, and it's got this beautiful. I don't remember if it's a palace or a chapel with a palace. Or a palace with a chapel on the top. So I think it's one giant castle or palace or something up there, and it's got a really big chapel attached to it. But anyway, it's a really cool place. I want to visit that, but if we're only there for 12 or 14 days, we don't have time to see Mont Saint Michel. So if we have the 16-day time frame, I definitely want to go down there and see that and film the experience, because my God, that would be such a fun thing to see. So, yeah. And then, depending on how long it takes to save up money, and all that, I'm also kind of vaguely looking into taking my dad with me, because I rarely get an opportunity to go on vacation or something with my dad, and I'm sure he'd love to see all these places that, me and Chris are going. So I'm kind of looking into it, but at the same time, bringing my dad with me does complicate everything, because Chris and I were going to share rooms everywhere we went. But on the Queen Mary 2, for instance, you can't have more than 2 people in a cabin built for 2. We'd have to get like a cabin designed for 3 people, and that will definitely cost a lot more money. It just complicates everything, so I don't know. So yeah, I'm not very seriously looking into bringing my dad, but it would be nice. So, all right. Chris says, I really don't like American beers. They all taste like weak water. I can't really comment too much on beer. I don't really drink beer. I drink wine. I don't drink beer. Okay, just trying to catch up with where the comments were. Oh, here we go. Okay. Hey, Kobe. Yeah, I was just talking about my Queen Mary 2 trip. Frederick says, if Chris wants good live music and food, he will come with you to the pub, minus getting liquor. Now, that's true. He probably would go to the pub for food. In fact, we did. You know what? I'm so dumb. I was mentioning before that that one of the things Chris and I want to do is we want to get fish and chips in every part of the UK we go to. So when we get to Northern Ireland, we certainly want to eat fish and chips there to see what, fish and chips is like in Northern Ireland. When we go to Bristol, we want to get fish and chips there to see what the, west coast of England is like, and get fish and chips in Southampton and in London, So we definitely want to do that. And if we go to Liverpool, then, fish and chips there. So, because, apparently it's different by region. So, and even if it's not, we love fish and chips, so we're going to have it anyway. And they have fish and chips aboard the Queen Mary too, which will be really nice. So, yeah, so when we go to Belfast to go to a pub and get fish and chips, I will be ordering the Guinness, and he will be ordering a cup of water. Northern Ireland's finest water. He'll probably confuse everyone at the pub, but still. Dino says, I'm thinking about all your trip will include, and I think you might not be sleeping much. Too much to do and see. Definitely. And I know there's been a lot of people that have been telling me, oh, Alex, when you go to the UK, what you should be doing is taking your time and relaxing. But the thing is this isn't necessarily a vacation. The whole purpose of going to the UK is because it is a business trip. It's going for filming stuff for this channel. I have to make it as profitable as possible because, it will be very expensive to go down there. It's not... the whole thing won't be paid for by donation. A great sum of my own money is going towards it as well. I think I'll probably be paying around 80% of the cost of the trip, based off of how much people have donated so far to it. But yeah, it is a huge sum of money, and I want to make that money back by producing video content, and that benefits you guys because you guys watch the channel and you want to see more content. So, so everything that I do there has to be filmed, and it has to be filmed in a way that it can be used ambiguously, a nice big word there, can be used ambiguously for multiple videos and not just one particular video. So, but I am looking forward to it, and, it's not like I won't be enjoying myself, I know how to have fun in times of, keeping a schedule and stuff like that. Chris is the same way. That's one of the reasons why I chose to go on this trip with him. Not just because he's pretty much been to most of these places, but because he's the kind of personality where he likes to be on time, get things done, be, economic about it, but at the same time, he can have fun doing it. And that's how I am. So... I like that about his personality. So, History with Kobe says, is there any chance you will be going to Edinburgh? You know, I would love to go to Edinburgh, but it is nowhere near. Like, Edinburgh is so far north of everything we're going to be doing, and unfortunately, it just is not even on the list of places we are hoping to be able to go to. I would love to go there because one of the biggest things I want to go there to see is the Royal Yacht Britannia. I want to film the Royal Yacht Britannia and, you know, and try to make some kind of video out of it. I'd love to go around the streets of Edinburgh and just see the old, you know, the old town, everything, the large chapel in the center, not chapel, but it's a church of some kind in the center of the city, and, you know, and it's beautiful. I mean, every time I look up videos of Edinburgh, it's just absolutely beautiful, beautiful city. But the thing is, it's just so far north. You know, and some people will say, oh, but it's only a, you know, couple hours train ride, and that's true, but with a schedule as tight as we have, you know, we can really only afford to go places that are less than 2 hours away by train. And so, you know, Belfast is different because we have to take a plane, and it's less than a 2-hour flight there. So, you know, so that's the thing is that Edinburgh, I think, is a 4-hour train ride, I think they said, from London, or even from Southampton, depending on what time frame we do it. If we did do it, hypothetically speaking, and we were in Southampton at the time, it would definitely be a very long trip. You know, so the more hours we spend traveling, the less time we are spending filming stuff or sleeping. So, yeah, that is one of the troubles of Edinburgh. But I'd love to go there. If there was a way I could convince Chris, you know, maybe you guys should all create a petition or something to Chris and be like, go to Edinburgh. You know, maybe he'll do it. I don't know. Where is it? Transportation fan from California says, Alex, did you see my drawing yet? Which one? Is there one that you recently sent me or something? Okay. Oh, Jack Bradley says, was there a worst year for Queen Mary when she was carrying very few passengers like Titanic's sister ship Olympic had done in 1933? Yeah, definitely. There were several bad years. Every year between 1962 through 1967 was increasingly a bad year for Queen Mary, to the point where 1967 was a horrible year for the Queen Mary. Because with each passing year, there was fewer and fewer passengers aboard the ship booking passage across the Atlantic. Mick says, what got you interested in narrow gauge steam instead of mainline steam railroads? That's an easy question. You see, it's always been Disneyland that got me interested in narrow gauge. And the reason is because while I love 440s, the kind that run on mainline standard gauge, the thing is that they're often very, very big machines. And I used to go to Disneyland even from I think the first time I ever went to Disneyland, I was a baby, an infant. And that was, you know, a long time ago. But I grew up going to Disneyland, and they had all narrow gauge stuff. 2 of their 5 engines are miniature, so they're not just narrow gauge, they're miniature. So, you know, they have 2 440s, the CK Holiday and the EP Ripley, and they are 5/8 scale. And the thing is that they're designed to look standard gauge, but in miniature. But there's something about their small size that always just kind of intrigued me. I don't know. They didn't seem so big and clunky. You know, like there's something about standard gauge size trains that they're big and clunky, and I don't know. If they were a personality, they would be clumsy. I don't know any better way to say it. And so, and then the other thing too is that the other three engines they have on the Disneyland Railroad are narrow gauge engines. So you got two Forneys and one Porter engine. And outside of Disneyland, I had never in my life seen Forneys or Porters before. So it just sparked my interest in a way that, you know, standard gauge trains just never did. And I think it's just, frankly, it's just because I think Disneyland got into my brain first. If I had grown up going to some kind of railroad museum where they had standard gauge versions of all those types of trains, maybe it would have been different. But I grew up going to Disneyland, and the smaller trains I thought were just so much cooler. There was something so interesting about watching these tiny, I say tiny, but they're pretty big, these, you know, tiny Disneyland trains hauling all these passengers, you know. There's just something kind of cool about it, you know. You can really see the strength of the engines and stuff. So I don't know. I've just always been interested in narrow gauge ever since then. And then I discovered, you know, real narrow gauge, with, you know, like the actual like Rio Grande Western types of equipment. And there's a lot of interest there too. I'm not a fan of the K-type engines, but I do like the, what is it called? The 168 over at the Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad. The 168 is the largest narrow gauge engine that I like. So, you know, some people, their largest engine is, I don't know, a Mikado or a Challenger or a Big Boy, which is the largest locomotive or whatever. But the largest narrow gauge locomotive that I like to look at is the 168 at Cumbres and Toltec, because it's not so big that it looks clunky, but it is a very nicely proportioned engine. That's the other thing too. I like a certain proportion of cab size to boiler size to wheel driver size, that kind of thing. So I know I'm weird. You know, as I'm explaining it to you guys, I'm thinking to myself, I'm a really weird guy. So, but there's just something about, you know, these little engines just going around. I just like it, you know. Okay. Chris says, hey Alex, I really feel like a European born in the wrong country. I feel like that at times too. I feel like in some past life or something, maybe I was, you know, an Englishman or a Scotsman or something, you know. I don't feel like, I don't know. I pledged my allegiance to the Star-Spangled Banner. You know, I am American through and through, but nevertheless, part of me has always been kind of like, you know, I just feel a more connection to the UK than anything. You know, I'm even a monarchist at heart, you know, so I'm sorry folks that are very much against the monarchy, but that's just me. I've always been very much into the British monarchy and, you know, that kind of thing. So it's, yeah, I don't know. I often tell people, because there's some people that, you know, I hear them talk about their life in the UK and they're like, I don't want to be here, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know, I would trade your life with mine in an instant if I could. I want to live there. I want to have that life. But you know, this is the life I was given, and I have to, you know, I have to do good things with it, you know. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird. I hate talking about it because because it makes me sound so strange. But I am a strange person. Um, Dina says, you'll be spoiled in the Queen Mary 2 pub. Oh, I hope so. Geez, the chat jumped again. I have to go find where I was. And then try to catch up. Okay, I've already read that. Read that. That's strange. Like a whole section of of the questions I was just reading has disappeared. Oh, that is weird. Jack Riley says, what's your favorite Cunard liner that was painted white? Oh, I already answered that. It's the Mauritania. Okay, what? I am so confused. Where was I last at with these comments? Here we go. Okay. Chris says, hey Alex, a British staple food is a slice of bread with beans on top of it. I've heard of it. No, I'm not eating it. There's a few things I'll have. Like, one of the things that I want to have that's a staple food is like a egg and bacon buddy, which is so very simple. It's just a piece of bread with butter and it's toasted and you get eggs and bacon on it. Very simple, but that's something I want to try, you know. Yeah, beans on toast. I can't do it. Kobe says, what are you going to do with the complimentary bottle of champagne you get in every cabin? He's referring to Queen Mary 2. They used to give you a complimentary bottle of champagne, but I heard in the last year or so they don't do that anymore. I might be wrong, but if I am wrong and they still do offer it, I'm going to drink it. I mean, Chris probably won't drink any, but I'll drink it. I like champagne. Kevin says, I really want to see Loch Ness in Scotland. I went to see Loch Ness just because of the beauty of the landscape. I'm not really expecting to see anything popping out of the water, you know? So, Chris says, I wouldn't mind sneaking on board a ship heading to Europe, and when I would get to Europe, I would love to disappear. Yeah. Let's see, Jack Bradley says, what about Andrea Doria? Wait. Jack Bradley says, do you think Lusitania should be raised? No, I think it should stay down there. Jack says, and rebuilt and brought back into service. No. What about Andrea Doria? I don't really know what the Andrea Doria is. Or Wilhelm Gustloff. Or Titanic or Britannic. No. I think all ships that have been sunk or scrapped or destroyed or whatever should... Well, maybe not scrapped. But all ships that have been sunk should stay down in the water. Yeah, I don't see a reason to bring them up, you know. But there are certain ships that I think would be kind of cool if they were replicated. You know, like, it'd be kind of cool if somebody rebuilt the Olympic someday. Not the Titanic. I find that very distasteful when, you know, someone announces, oh, we're going to rebuild the Titanic. And I'm like, it doesn't seem right. Like, it's like that guy, Clive Palmer, you know, who was going to rebuild the Titanic as a cruise ship. Thankfully, his idea, you know, was completely canceled 2 years ago. But, you know, if he had said, oh, I'm going to rebuild the Olympic as a cruise ship and it'll have some odes to the Titanic aboard it, I would have been like, okay, cool. All right, fine. But it's the whole thing of, like, we're going to rebuild Titanic because we love the, you know, the idea of this tragic ship and all the people who died on it. Like, that just doesn't seem right. It's almost like creating a theme park ride out of a real accident, you know? Like, it just seems wrong, you know? So, let's see, Kevin left. See you later, Kevin. Kobe says, do you think Cunard will build another ocean liner once the Queen Mary 2 goes out of service? I get asked this a lot. The thing is, I really don't know. Normally, with a business, you can predict these things. Because if a company offers a service that is really popular and it makes them a lot of money, then you can bet they're going to try to revive that service as much as possible. But the thing is that the thing about ocean liners is they're more costly to build and their profit margins are smaller than a cruise ship's profit margins. So the thing is that the Queen Mary 2 is a very popular ship, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there will be one to replace her when she retires. So that's the thing that's hard to predict. Do I think that they'll do it? A giant portion of me says no, but then there's a small part of me that says yes because it's so profitable, you know, but it's just hard to say. Chris says, hey Alex, Loch Ness is about 980 feet deep. Jeez, that's pretty deep. Mick says, did you know the Clear Creek narrow gauge line for the train simulator? It's a nice challenge to haul trains up the grades. Oh, nice. Tico says, even though Titanic is more popular, Olympic has a lot more history and is objectively more interesting than Titanic. I agree. I agree with that statement. Alright, let's change out the trains, because this one's been running for quite a while. So I like to just bring the train closer to the front of the layout. I'm not sure if you guys, yeah, you guys should be able to see this. And then I use my uncoupling tool to uncouple the first car from the locomotive. Okay, and then I'll push one of the couplers out of the way and then push the cars forward, because I want the couplers not to link together. I want them to, it's kind of weird how to describe it, but they kind of come together like this, but they don't link. And that will help me to push the train in reverse and be able to put it away. So now I reverse the train. switch the track. And then you'll see the train over there going onto the bridge. Now I can move that engine forward. And I'm going to put the Porter engine away, so it's going to go into the engine house. So I have to bring the Porter engine past the water tower, because that's where the switch is. Then I switch the switch manually. And then I have to turn on this middle switch here, down here, to activate power. Oh, I can turn this one off. I don't need that one anymore. But the middle one has to be on, so that way I can supply power to the rails of the particular track in the engine house that this engine will go to. So, why don't I grab that? And you guys can see the engine going in. And then I turn off the power. I go down to this switch here. Turn that off. Turn on the one on the right. Flip the switch. And now something's wrong. I think, yep, somehow the engine got caught on the door. Okay. So now I'm bringing out before me and I'm going to go ahead and place this back over here. I can't really tell what I'm doing here. Oh, you guys couldn't even see that because the camera lost connection. What in the... Okay. Always with these technical issues. There we go. That was so weird. Okay, so I'm going to proceed with coupling the... Actually, I gotta weigh down the first car. I bought these weights because, you see, the freight train is empty. And the caboose, because it's the way that the circuit works on the lighted caboose at the end of the freight train, makes it so the electrical contacts that touch the axles of the caboose make the axles harder to turn, and because of that, it creates drag on the rails, and that drag is enough to pull the front car of the freight train off the tracks. Now, it hasn't happened yet, but I can see it wanting to jump the rails. So, to prevent that from happening, I have weights to weigh down the front car. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring some of these out. Let's cut them in twos. Try to read some of your guys' questions while I do this. Jack asks, why did White Star Line founder? It didn't founder. White Star Line was merged with Cunard, and then it was eventually dissolved. Tico says, do you plan to add any switch motors to the layout to make it easier to do operations? No, because I feel that the installation of the switch motors will be a big headache for me. So I don't want to do that, just because of the installation process. Jack, why are you saying weird stuff like that? I don't get it. Like, who says that? Who goes on someone's live stream and says stuff like that? You've been saying weird stuff throughout the whole stream. And I've ignored it because I'm like, you know, maybe he just meant to say something else or something. But you're spamming the chat. You're saying weird stuff. And I'm like, what in the world? Anyway, see you later, Ron. Okay, I need to find something to, because these weights don't come with a way to cut them apart. Ah, heck. I'll break them apart. There we go. Okay. I think... No. Maybe one more. I have plenty of these weights anyway, so it's not like I have to worry about not having enough. Transportation fan says, Alex, what do you think is the hardest railway era to model? Hardest railway era to model. It might be... It might be like anywhere from the 1830s through the 1860s, because there are certain designs of the railroad that simply just aren't sold. So almost everything would have to be custom made. Like literally almost everything. Or extremely what they call kit bashed, which is where you have to like take a model kit and then alter it heavily to fit what you're trying to do. So I think that might be it from the 1830s to the 1860s, because that's really the era where a lot of stuff just isn't available for you to model on your layout. You'd have to do it all by hand. Mick says, did your family have a model railroad when you were a kid? My dad... No, not my dad. Well, technically, my grandfather was a model railroader. But the thing is, I didn't know that until like a decade after I was already a model railroad fan. Because before I was born, my grandfather had gave away all his model railroading stuff, his layouts, everything, to another family member who was a model railroader. I didn't know that family member very well, and to this day they're not really part of my life. But yeah, so I didn't even know, but my grandfather was a model railroader, but I just didn't know because all my life he just never had model railroad stuff at all. But my dad really liked model railroads, and when I was a kid, he bought me like all kinds of model railroad train sets and stuff. My first model railroad train set was an HO scale Santa Fe diesel train. I don't even know what kind of engine it was. It was very much a modern train from the mid 1990s. Because and it was cool, but I always wanted to have steam trains. And the thing was that, when I was a kid, it just small steam trains, like I wanted either the stuff I wanted didn't exist in HO scale, or the 440s, which they did sell when I was a kid. Everybody warned me against getting those. Like my dad would take me to the train store, and the guy at the train store would be like, oh yeah, you don't want those. They can't haul anything. They can barely haul themselves. So he was like, it'd just be a waste of money. And so I never had any steam trains growing up. And that was all I really wanted. And so, very specific ones at that. So it wasn't until I was already a teenager that I found out my grandfather was a model railroader. And the way I found out was because one day I was helping to clean his house, and I came across a N-scale steam locomotive set. And I was like, what is this? And then I found another one, which was a N-scale standard gauge type Mikado, and 14 cars, 13 of which were box cars. Each one was labeled as one of the original 13 colonies of the United States, and the 14th car, which was a caboose, represented the entire, United States of 1776. And it was a bicentennial train. And I asked my grandfather about it, and then he told me all about how he used to be a model railroader and stuff like that, and he just retired from it because he got too old, and it was too expensive, and there was nowhere to keep any of the stuff. So he gave me anything he had left in his house, which was just very little. And it was all N scale, which was a scale I wasn't used to working with, but I thought N scale is pretty cool because it's super small, so you can build larger worlds out of it. And for the longest time, I had N scale trains. I was building up an N scale collection, but eventually I got rid of N scale in 2018, I think it was. Got rid of N scale because it was too small to do anything that I wanted. And at one point, I couldn't even use my layout anymore because the little steam trains just couldn't work. They just didn't work at all. So I got tired of it. I'm like, I need something that's big, bulky, something that won't, conk out just because it, has a little bit of dust on it, And that's when I got into On30. Because On30 is, it's tough, tough stuff. It can take a beating, So, yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. Goofy Roll says, your train set reminds me of the thrill of the first time I had one. You learn so much with them. Oh, I know. Yeah. In fact, I'm one of the people that, like, I would like to see... I would like to see more young people and kids being interested in model railroads and stuff like that, just like I am. But this world is becoming increasingly more digital. So there are a lot of young people who are interested in trains, but they play around with like train simulators on their computer, which is fine. So do I. Like I play Railroads Online, which is a really good train simulator. But there is something very different about playing Railroads Online versus playing with actual models. Because, first of all, if you're the kind of person who wants to do what I do, which is like to build a layout and to have an actual world of your own, there's something really cool about building it yourself, It's kind of... I don't know. It's custom. It's like I can look at this and go, nobody else in the world has what I have, because it is 100% custom, and you can put your whole personality into it. So this layout, eventually when it's closer to completion, it'll have kind of like all the little quirks and things of the era that I think kind of define the era. So yeah, I kind of like it. Transportation Fan says, have you seen the 1929 film The General? Yes, it was very good. I liked that one. That's the one with Buster Keaton, right? Because I liked that one. Tico says, I'm currently trying to model a British Heritage Railway, but it's a little difficult. Where is it? Heritage Railway. A little difficult to acquire British locomotives and rolling stock here in the States. Ah, that's understandable. What's weird is this Forney engine that I have behind me, that was sold to me by some guy in England. He had it, yeah. So yeah. That was pretty cool. That's the one I told you that when I opened the cab doors, there was like a wolf spider living in there, and I almost dropped the locomotive when I saw it, because it was just like that, and I was like, oh god, I can't stand spiders. I can't stand them. So I got my weights, I got the front car open, and so I'm just going to put these inside. These will help weigh the front of the car down so that way the car doesn't want to jump the rails because of the weight of the cars behind it. And then the second car, I'm going to do the same thing but with less weights, fewer weights, whatever. Well, actually, I need to put one of these on the back axles. There we go. So those are on the back axles. This goes on the front axle of this one. So the second car doesn't need as much weight because, there's... The second car is hauling less weight behind it, but it still needs to be weighed down a little. And there we go. Okay. Now I can reverse the train to connect the cars. Jack, yes, I do have mental health issues. I have schizophrenia. And I've had that for quite a long time. I was diagnosed with it in 2011. But I don't know what that has to do with this. Okay, reverse the trend. Okay. Oh, it didn't connect. There we go. Okay. I am satisfied with how that's going. And you'll also notice, so the Forney that I'm using, we've kind of jokingly nicknamed it Mr. Squeaky on this channel because it's been famously squeaky forever. It is not squeaking anymore. That is because that same electrically conductive grease that has been applied to the rails, I've also been able to put that into the axles at the particular area that is squeaking. And technically, it should be good for another 10 years. It may not need any kind of cleaning or anything for 10 years. I mean, let's hope, you know. But yeah, it's working well. No track slip. No wheel slip, I mean, on the track. The front two cars are weighted down slightly, so that way they don't have the tendency to want to jump the rails around particularly tight corners. Yeah. And if you guys are wondering what type of grease, it is called No Ox ID A Special. So the grease is designed to go on the rails at a very light film of it. It prevents the rails from oxidizing, and it creates a better electrical connection. You do have to clean your rails before you apply it, but once you apply it, you won't need to apply it again for another 10 years. You won't even need to clean your rails, supposedly, for another 10 years. Now, there are some people who've had to clean it every 5 years, but nevertheless, if you're a model railroader, you know that you're probably cleaning your rails at least once a month, at least. But this stuff should make it so you can go 5 solid years without having to clean your rails because it creates such a good electrical connection and it prevents oxidizing on your rails. So that's one thing I forgot to mention on my last live stream when I was talking about it was that this is like a lifesaver, this product. And it's just a very solid grease. And you just tap your fingers very lightly into it, and then you just wipe your fingers around the tracks. And you're just looking to create like a small film of grease on the tracks. The thing about this product, though, is that in this scale, O scale, my equipment is heavy enough that, as you can see, the locomotive is still pulling the train just fine. Despite the fact that the rails are greased, it's not creating any problems. But if you're running HO scale or something, or even N scale, and N scale especially, you know, you might have issues with wheel slip which means you'll probably have to get more locomotives to pull the same size train that you've normally pulled. You know, if you have a diesel, let's say you have diesel trains, and you have a diesel engine that can easily pull 10, 12 cars, you know, you might need a second one after applying this to the rails. So that kind of thing is something you might have to look out for with this product. But other than that, as you can see, my locomotive is still hauling the same amount of cars that it's hauled before. In fact, the caboose at the end of this train is harder to pull than the previous caboose by a factor of like 3. So it's almost like there are 3 extra cars tacked on to the end of this train. And it's still pulling it just fine, no wheel slip at all. So, and even if there was wheel slip, the rails are greased, so it won't cause any kind of pitting or damages to the wheels of the locomotive. That was another issue I was afraid of, because the wheels on these trains eventually wear down with use. You know, there is friction, and it does happen. But with the rails slightly greased, it's less damage is going to happen over time and prolong and preserve the train. So I'm very happy with how it's turned out. Yeah. Okay, where were we? Okay. Read that one. And you guys probably can't tell, but the caboose is lit with light. It's just probably hard to tell because, you know, the windows are so small. But the caboose is lit up with a light inside. Okay. Mick says, if anything, I will stick to N scale. I like long trains. Yeah, if you're running either really large steam locomotives or just a bunch of diesel locomotives, and you like long trains, then yeah, that's definitely a scale that you would sell. If I was interested in diesel, I would do N scale for sure, without a doubt, because N scale didn't work for me having 440s in N scale. That's what I loved to collect, was 440s. It just didn't work in N scale. But the diesels were always reliable. The diesels were just 100% reliable all the time. So yeah, if I wanted to have a diesel layout, which I don't really, but if I did, it would be N scale. Because you can have longer trains, and you can build a larger world with the same amount of space, you know? So, Mike says, yay, no squeak. Yeah, no squeaking. What? Mick says, how did you manage to get the grease into the right place? So, it was not easy. Because there is literally only a millimeter of space between the wheel itself and the truck frame. The truck frame. There's a millimeter of space between them. And so I went in there with like a little piece of plastic, poly, what is it? Poly something. Of course, this only says plastic. Anyway, it's a common model builder's plastic. Poly something, or Eura something. I don't know. I can't remember. And I went there with a little tiny piece. I mean, just fractions of a millimeter in thickness. And I just like dipped a little bit of the tip of the plastic in the grease, and then I went in there and like tried very carefully with like precision to poke the grease into the housing of the axle. So we just had the train uncouple. What just happened? Why did it uncouple? There doesn't appear to be anything wrong with the coupler or the cars. I don't know why it just uncoupled like that. Alright. Dangerous Brian says, how are you getting on with the construction of your model caboose for your train? So that project of the model caboose, I decided I'm gonna really take my time with it because I can't stand building it. I'll be honest, I can't stand building it. I don't have the patience for it. And so every time I get ready to start working on it, I get really stressed out because I just can't stand it. You know, I don't have the patience for that kind of thing. It's way too detailed. Like, it is... I've worked on some pretty complex models before. The most complex model before this one I've ever worked on was my Titanic model. That was difficult. That took me, like, you know, a week to do. And I did a very sloppy job on it because I don't have the patience for models that are that detailed. And this caboose was much more detailed than that Titanic model. Much more. There was a lot of steps involved in just completing one step. So I'm going to take my time with it. I probably won't finish it for a whole year from now. And so because of that, I bought a new caboose instead, and it's coming around the corner as we speak. It is the exact same style of caboose that I was building, so it's exactly the same one that I was building. But I bought a pre-built one instead because I don't have the patience. So it'll take me forever to build that caboose. But I will build it because it was an expensive model. Like, I'm not going to throw it out, not going to get rid of it, not going to sell it. It's certainly not worth anything at the moment because it's, you know, it's not complete, but at the same time it's not a full kit that's been untouched. So I can't sell it at this point. I have to finish it if I want to sell it. But yeah, for now, I'm happy with the already built caboose that I have. It's exactly what I was looking for, and it's the dimensions I was looking for too. So, yeah. Okay. Tico says, are you worried the train will ever fall off the track? Because that's a very real risk for me since my nephew is quite reckless. I'm not that worried about my train falling off the track. I mean, there are times where sometimes I lie awake at night, sometimes worried about it. But I don't have a real reason to be worried because at the moment, I don't have any pets, no dogs or cats or anything. If I had cats, I'd be really worried. Cats love pushing stuff off of tables just for the fun of it. So yeah, I would be worried if I had cats or something. I'm not really worried. My sister's dog, you know, I've puppy sitted for, my sister before, so I've had the dog over a few times. The dog doesn't come anywhere near the layout. If she does, she's very gentle. The dog, she can be quite clumsy at times, but she really tries not to be clumsy, which is what I like about the dog. She tries not to be clumsy. So she's very careful when she comes in here. She doesn't knock anything over. But if anything, there is a worry about my father. Because when he's sitting where I'm sitting and he's working on editing his videos, sometimes he leans back like this, or he'll push his chair back, and then he'll hit the end of the layout. And I'm like, Dad, you gotta be careful. There could be a train behind you, And the train, it's, when it passes right here, there's probably, maybe the width of a finger between the edge of the layout and how far in the train is. Because they say that you should put a minimum of 2 inches of space between the edge of the layout and the first rail of the track. But if I did that, the turn on this side of the layout would have to be really tight, and I couldn't do that. I wanted to expand the layout as far as I could. So instead, there is a full inch and a quarter of space, between the first rail and the edge of the layout, which is not recommended. But it's enough that the train, stays on the track. And then there was a worry that what if it fell off the trestle bridge, Because when I was building that trestle bridge, that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do up until that point. Because the trestle bridge is not a kit. I designed it myself, and I built it from scratch. And I'd never built anything like it in my life before that. Nothing like that. And it had to be perfectly flat, even though the bridge would be sitting on a part of the table that was not level. I mean, it was like warped, wavy kind of thing. And I had to make it so it was level. So I actually built the bridge upside down. I built it on a separate piece of foam board, and I built the bridge from the top to the bottom upside down. And then when I was ready, I flipped it over, because the reason why I did it upside down is because it would be flat. The surface of the rails would be flat. And then I installed it like that. I added all the support beams and things. But I was still worried that if there was any kind of bumps or any kind of thing, if I did something wrong and the surface of the bridge was tilted or something, then I was worried as a train would go around it, the train would fall off of it. And so that was a worry for sure. And in fact, the tracks that go over the bridge, there are no rail joints on the bridge at all. No rail joints. That is one solid piece of track. And I did that on purpose, because sometimes when you have rail joints, that's an area where a train could potentially derail. And I did not want a train to derail on that bridge, because if it falls, it's fallen, hard. So I did that in one single piece of track. And so it's smooth rails all the way around the whole thing. And so that bridge was very, very carefully thought out. And that's why I'm so proud of that bridge too. It's because I've never built anything like it before, and I executed it so successfully. I'm so proud of that bridge. Okay. Oh, good night, Mick. Lori says the logs look so good. Thanks so much. You know, Jack Bradley, I let you stay in the comment section despite the fact that, you know, you were impersonating me for weeks and stuff. You know, because I thought, you know, maybe part of this is my fault. Maybe I should have been nice or something, or maybe I was mean for some reason. You know, I thought I'll let him stay because, you know, if he just is just nice to everybody and says nice things, that's fine. But Jack, you have to see that the things you are saying are not right. You can't say this stuff. I can't even say this on YouTube because YouTube could actually, you know, remove my video for saying certain words that you are saying in the chat. So it is not me. I have been so nice to you in this whole chat. I have not mentioned any of the things that you have done over the past couple weeks because I was giving you the benefit of the doubt that maybe I was wrong. But you have proven me right, Jack. So I'm sorry. Every time I see you come up with a new profile and come to my channel, I will have to block you. Not because I'm mean, because that is the right thing for me to do. For not just the channel, but for the viewers themselves. My God. Ugh. My goodness. So the next step for this, like, how do you transition from that, you know? Like, how do you go from that conversation to this? Just jump right in, I guess. But the next step for the mountain, well, actually, for the layout in general, is to finish doing the plaster work on the mountain. Because the front side is mostly done. The back side, it still needs, like, the scraggly rocks that the front side has. Which means casting more plaster. So I have to buy casting plaster. And then I currently have a different type of plaster that's designed to be really lumpy. And that will help give any of the smooth areas some texture. Because I tried doing texture myself, which is doable. And I did it right here. But because it's entirely out of plaster itself with nothing to hold it together, as there's heat and cold in my apartment, it expands and contracts all the plaster and it just cracks and breaks off. I've actually been able to use all that broken plaster to my advantage. I've actually used it as rockfall debris at the base of the waterfalls, which was actually pretty cool. It's very convincing. But there are areas that are very, like, smooth, where I haven't, you know, plastered on pieces of rock and stuff like that. So that's where I'll use that special plaster I have that's designed to be lumpy. It's got a fibrous material in it to make it so it holds together well. So any parts that are smooth will be covered in that lumpy plaster. And then once that plaster work is done, I can start painting the mountain itself. And because there's still a lot of people that think that this layout's supposed to be like a winter layout, like it's snowy. It's white because it's not complete. It's not been painted. So the whole thing will be painted, and it will feature, I think, the landscape as it transitions from summer to autumn. Because, you know, I live in Oregon, and here in this time, not this time of year, but here in Oregon, when things transfer from summer to autumn, you start getting the first trees turning red or orange or yellow, and it's really beautiful. Now, when you go into full autumn, everything is red, orange, and yellow. And that would be cool, but I don't want the full autumn effect on the layout. I still want a lot of green and a lot of different shades of green, you know? But with a few trees starting to turn. So I'm gonna style it in like the very beginnings of autumn. And I still want a third locomotive, you know, like Kevin says you're still live. I am. I'm still live. I am going to end the stream soon, though, because I've been here for a while. Oh, that's so nice. Goofy Roll says, I can't speak for everyone else, but I come to your live chats for a breath of fresh air. I have enough stress on the rest of my week and love relaxing to your friendliness. Thank you so much, Goofy. That is exactly what these live streams are meant to be. They're not meant to be a place where I come here and, like, just, you know, spew opinions and, you know, and argue with people in the chat. Like, I do these streams so we can, like, just focus on the fun stuff, you know? Like, it's for me and for you guys, you know? So, but yeah, thank you so much. Like, that is exactly what these streams are meant to be. It's just fun. But yeah, where was I? Talking about... Well, I mentioned the trees. And the landscape. Oh, that's weird. I don't remember what I was going to say. But, yeah, anyway. Oh, locomotive. So, I want to buy a third locomotive. And now, naturally, the financial side of me is like, you don't need one. You know, you got two. Why do you need a third? But the reason why is because, like you saw a few minutes ago, I swapped out the other... What is it? What are you doing? You're supposed to haul the train. Huh. And it disconnected at that same spot. Huh. You know, the train does feel... Like, that caboose, it doesn't roll as easily as all the other cars on my layout. And it's because of the electrical... I'll show you. Let me just... Oh, pfft. Just derailed this car. I'll deal with that later. Okay. So the caboose is meant to... Well, it didn't derail at first. I derailed it by picking it up. But the caboose is designed to light up. There's 3 LEDs inside, which is a cool effect. But the way it is done with this particular setup is that you might be able to see there are little copper tabs. The copper tabs run vertical this way. And the copper tabs are touching the axles of the car. And that creates friction. And so because of that, if I were to like take my finger and try to spin the wheel doesn't spin. It spins if I purposely move it, but if I flick my finger like this, the wheel should continue going. It should keep going, and then slowly it'll stop. It doesn't do that. As soon as I lift my finger up, it stopped instantly. And that's because the friction of the copper tabs on the wheels. And that friction is what makes it so the car doesn't roll freely. Because... Here, let me slide this forward. You should never slide your locomotives on the rails, but you know. So if I tried to roll this car forward and then lift my hand off to see if it will roll freely, it won't. I'll show you. It kind of just immediately comes to a stop. Now, if I take this car, which does not have those tabs on the axles, okay, and then I do that, it rolls freely. So it is very easy to roll this car. The caboose, not so much. And so I'm thinking that even though I love the fact that the caboose lights up, it's the reason why the train keeps uncoupling, is because it's just, when it goes around a corner, there's so much friction happening that the engine is pulling as hard as it can, and the couplers just aren't holding together. So either that or the coupler on the end of the locomotive is broken. Yeah, the coupler on the end of the locomotive isn't broken. And neither is this one. Honestly, it's just because there's so much weight on the end of the train. So, what I'm going to eventually do, maybe not this moment, because I've got a lot to do, but eventually I'm just going to remove the tabs off of this, so that way the wheels will roll more freely. Because, I mean, actually, I don't even need to remove the tabs. If I just bend them up enough, they... Oh, but the axles are built a certain way. Well, I have replacement axles I could put on this. Oh, but that's attached with a wire. I don't want to... Yeah, those are the wires. See, if I bend the tabs upward, the wheels do roll more freely. Oh, that's a lot better. It could be better, like, there's insulation on either side, which is also slowing it down. But without the tabs touching, the car wheels do roll more freely now. Oh, that is a lot better. Okay, that's a lot better. So let's go ahead and couple this train again. Okay. And now we just couple the cars back together. Alright, we'll see if it still uncouples around that corner over there. I don't think it will this time. It's just that extra friction that was pulling the train. I think that was having a negative effect on it. Yeah, see, it's fine now. Cool. The deed is done. Alright, folks. Well, I am going to call this the end of the live stream. There will be no live stream tomorrow. Tomorrow is Sunday, right? Yeah. So no live stream tomorrow. And no live stream on Wednesday. I might move the tea time that I normally do on Wednesdays. I might move that to, like, I don't know, maybe Friday. I can't explain why I'm not available this week. I can tell you afterwards, but I can't explain why I'm available this week. But this week is going to be a really wacky schedule for me that is completely unsure of itself. Like, everything that's happening this week may not even happen at all this week. So it could be that on Wednesday, all of a sudden, I'm completely available. Or I could be completely unavailable for the entire week. So that's kind of the crazy thing. So I'm going to try to do an afternoon tea time stream this week. I will not be able to tell you too far ahead of time when it's going to happen, just because, you know, I might not be able to do it at all. So, but I will let you know. But things should go back to normal the week after, I'm hoping. Also, remember to, if you haven't already, to see my video called Queen Mary, War Hero. It's the most recent history video I produced, and went through great effort to make it. And share it publicly with people, if you will. But yeah, other than that, I will see you all the next time I possibly can. Alright, everyone. Have a good one. Bye-bye.